adventurers. My name is Jess, and I'm the Rambling Bard. I figured it'd be best to tell you a little bit about me before getting into the meat of what I do. I'm non-binary, pansexual, and trans. As of this recording, I'm 32 years old, and I have started taking HRT, and as a matter of fact, this is dose 57 of both my testosterone blocker and estrogen. That makes it about a month now that I've been on HRT, and I'm hopeful. Right now I'm not wearing any makeup or anything like that. This is how I look, freshly shaven, and after about 57 doses of hormone replacement therapy. What else? When I originally wrote the script for this, it was before I had taken even my first dose, and it was when I still had high hopes for my first doctor's appointment, which went very well. If you're looking for the similar things, I encourage you to search LGBTQ-friendly doctors in your area. That's how we found the one that worked for me. Anyway, I'm married and polyamorous, and my wife Michelle and I have been together for almost 10 years now. Our beautiful kiddo Harley is 5 years old and smart as a whip. I have owned this brand, or at least been using this moniker, the Rambling Bard, for about 7 years now. I've spent the last 4 years doing nothing but focusing on making YouTube content. Well, the last 4 if you count 2020. I didn't get much done last calendar year, but that's a topic for later in the episode. I've tried my best to exemplify what it is to be a bard, a performer, a storyteller, a Jack or Jill of all trades, and ultimately someone who shares their passions for a living, supported by the kindness of fans and strangers alike. Here, you'll find music, cooking and baking, art, cosplay, crafting of all sorts, acting, adventures like camping, hiking, and fishing, talks about life and media, and of course one of my favorite pastimes, gaming, both video and tabletop. I'm not an educator, but ultimately I do hope to uplift, inspire, and entertain you with all of my content. Before I get to rambling about the next chapter, I wanted to point out that the pinned comment below will have chapter titles and timestamps. So if the whole video doesn't interest you, if you're not into long form stuff and you want to see something specific, or if it helps you remember where you left off on your last lunch break, it's easy to find what you want in any given episode. And yes, I absolutely yoinked this idea from Philly D, the beautiful bastard. Anyway, let's get right into the baking portion, I believe, is first. All right, we're recording 2 different ways. One through XSplit and one through my phone. This will be really interesting to try and sync up these audios, but I really want to show what I'm going through here. I have a ton of wires leading into this closet, all of them on extensions of some form or another. And in this tiny, ow, itty bitty little closet, we have this. My actual voice recording booth. And so as you can see through the phone here and at my feet, we've got a music stand. I got my Jenny stickers on there. Whoops, bonk. So this can hold scripts, or it can hold my monitor here, and I can watch my voice levels. And I'm just now setting this up. This is actually my first time using the full real deal. And we're gonna just use the webcam that I've got set up here. Obviously we're not gonna keep using the phone, so I'm gonna put that away. But we're gonna use the webcam that I've got set up here to record this next segment, which is the gaming segment, right? So I just wanted to show off the sound booth real quick. This is this will come way earlier in the episode than the actual the voiceover that I'm gonna be doing. But I just wanted to have a little bit of proof of, look, I'm not kidding around here. I'm serious about what I do, and for the most part, if you hear a voiceover, I'm doing it from in here. Will everything be in this closet that I do? No, not necessarily. But I kind of like the idea now that I'm doing it, of doing the talking heads in here. So we'll see how that goes, but I'm going to also be way cleaned up for that. It's slightly different setup for those talking heads. I'm in my pajamas, and that's how we do voice work. Anyway, so I'm gonna go outside and hit the mouse because the mouse can't reach in here. I'm out of USB extensions. So that way I can actually watch the footage that I'm about to do the voiceover recording for. So, yeah. What to say about baking and cooking in general? I was raised. My mom was she was the queen of making things herself. She got several blue ribbons in weaving and spinning and knitting and just anything that you can think of as far as creation. My mom was into it and then included in the kitchen. So probably my biggest inspiration, especially through my childhood, would have to be my mother. I have a lot of happy memories of making Christmas cookies with her, of seeing how her face would light up when we would enjoy something new that she tried out, a new recipe, that sort of thing. So that's kind of why I got into baking. I have a lot of fond memories of watching cooking shows too, and there's far too many for me to list them all right now, but it's safe to say that if it was on PBS, it inspired me and helped get me to where I am now, including the Great British Bake Off, which brings us to this recipe. This loaf was actually inspired and directly built from Paul Hollywood's walnut and Roquefort loaf. Along with a bunch of other resources, a link to that recipe and the version I do will be in the description below. And hey, click the like button on your way down there. I made the original recipe, the one that he does in the Great British Baking Show Masterclass, and it turned out beautifully. I followed all his directions to the T, and in fact, I kept a chunk of it in the freezer until very recently when we reheated it and had it with potato soup, I think is the best thing that it just goes with. It turned out fantastic. Like I said, it's got that characteristic swirl and nice crust, a good structure inside with the pocket of cheese. I'll try and include some pictures here that I took when we originally made it. I pulled them off of my Instagram. It was rich, creamy, earthy, and just a little bit bitter. Just a little bit from the nuts and from the cheese. A perfect balance for any salty, really rich soup or stew that you wanted to have it with. Anyway, like most things, I had to find a way to make it my own. After all, Paul Hollywood himself encouraged bakers to do just that, swap fillings and such to find new flavors. Well, with a few tweaks to the recipe, I created what I think is a tasty alternative. Sweet rather than bitter and floral rather than earthy, apricots and brie make for a winning combination in this loaf. I hope you enjoy. Good bread starts with good flour. I've got 450 grams of bread flour here, and I definitely recommend that you go for organic and unbleached. Next, you want 50 grams of your flavoring flour. I chose stone ground oats, which is literally just steel cut oats that I ground up with a mortar and pestle. Every recipe needs salt. I like fancy salt, so I've been using this pink Himalayan salt for a while. 10 grams of the stuff. 8 grams of fast action dry yeast. And for the liquid party, 350 milliliters of cool water. Next, we'll move on to the fillings. I chose one kind of nut, one kind of fruit, 200 grams of pecans, and next we have 200 grams of apricots. And let's not forget a wheel of Brie cheese, and so I don't miss it, a little bit of honey, because I've missed it a couple times recording it now. So as you can see, we've added our dry team to the bowl here. We've got both types of flour, yeast on the right, salt on the left. Try and keep the yeast and the salt from touching each other directly until you start to mix everything together, because the salt can slow the yeast down. Now you put that into your mixing bowl. If you have a stand mixer, if you're lucky enough to have patrons that support you, or an adoptive mama like I've got that support you and give you lots of really cool gifts and tools to use in your endeavors, then please, by all means, use your stand mixer. If you only have hands, then that's okay too. We're going to incorporate about half the water. It doesn't have to be exact. And we're going to leave the stand mixer on medium, or just slowly work it together with our hands until the dough starts to come together. If you're doing it in the mixer, in the meantime, what I like to do is start prepping our fillings. I have, again, thanks to my patrons, a food processor, and so that makes very quick work of chopping both the nuts and the apricots. And I'm going to show you a trick that involves this food processor, you may normally think, clean it out in between uses. Obviously, you can see I'm pulsing it here. I don't have to tell you what I'm doing. You can see it. You would clean it out fully between uses, right? Well, I'm going to pour out the nuts, but instead of cleaning it out, wiping it, or washing it out in the sink, I'm going to leave the remnants of the nuts in there, because when you chop up pecans, it kind of creates a resin and oil on the blade. And as you see, this dough is really starting to come together now. I've added the rest of the water and I've left it on medium, and the dough has started to come together. Now, like I said, I left the remnants of the nuts in there, and you're gonna see why. Because I can run sticky, dried apricots through a food processor, and it doesn't stick to the blades or the inside of the food processor at all. It's all going the same place in the end, so it's okay if the apricots have a little bit of pecans on them. But you'll see how easily it pours out, whereas if you had been cutting that with a knife, it'd be really hard to do. Quick hack though, if you do need to cut it up with a knife, spray your knife with just the blade of it, not the handle, the blade of your knife with just a little bit of cooking oil. Now, if you can see how the dough springs back just a little bit, it's got some density, but it springs back just a little bit, and it's pulled everything off the sides of the bowl, that's how you know it's ready to add the fillings. So now we're gonna add our fillings. I really expected the apricots to stick more here, and they didn't. They just dump right out of that bowl. And I guarantee you it's because of leaving the pecan powder in there. So we'll bump our mixer back up and wait for this mess to congeal. And it will, just give it time. You might need to stop it every now and then and pull the dough off the dough hook. I stepped up a little bit there. I think it's perfectly okay on 2 or 3. It doesn't need to go all the way up to 4. And there will hit a critical mass point where it stops pulling things into the dough, or it'll incorporate everything. So if you notice after it's been mixing for another 5 minutes or so that it's not incorporating anything else, then it's pretty safe to say that it's saturated. It's not going to pick up any more nuts or fruit. So I'm going to let this work for just a little bit, make sure it's fully incorporated, and we take it out. And there you can see it is not thoroughly through the dough itself. It's good to fold it a couple of times, squish it with your hands. I definitely enjoyed working with it. I'm really sorry for the camera work. I am doing this alone. And I didn't have a whole lot of tripods at the time. I have a lot more equipment now. Episode 2 will be much cleaner than this. But I have a lot more equipment now. I have lighting equipment. I have several tripods. And as you can see, I put it right back into the mixer to let it incorporate again. I folded it over a couple of times, and then I think what I'm saying here is you want to let it mix for about 5 minutes on this setting. Don't want to overwork it, but this is the point where we're finishing working the dough. And now we're going to bring it over and find a place for it to rest. That's right, this bowl right here. So we're gonna get that bowl slightly oiled, a little bit of cooking spray, not a whole lot, but make sure it is fully covered because this dough does have a possibility of getting sticky. I think the nuts, the oils and the resins from the nuts will prevent it for the most part. Because as you can see, look how clean that bowl is. So we'll put this in another bowl. I'm gonna need the mixer for other projects, so I'm taking it out of the mixing bowl. And we'll let it rise. You want it to rise until it's at least doubled in size, if not more so. And it's puffy and beautiful like this. So if you remember the honey that I almost forgot before and the wheel of cheese, I'm going to show you now how we're going to prep the rest of this loaf in order to get it into that fancy swirled pattern. It's way easier than anything you could possibly think. And the way that it's done fully incorporates the cheese and the honey. And it creates these, like I said before in the description, these beautiful pockets of cheese that as you're eating, they're gooey and lovely. So what you're gonna do is you're gonna quarter your wheel of Brie. And each quarter, you want to slice into chunks that are about an inch. You don't want them huge, you don't want them small, but Brie is nice and soft, it's workable. Keep the rind, you're not getting rid of the rind. The rind's the best part of the Brie, and do that with all 4 quarters. have to make this bread again. I remember making it now. It was so good. It's been a couple months, but... All right. There we are. Back to our nice poofy dough. I'm going to show you. We're going to divide this as well into quarters. And I'll show you how to make those fancy swirls. I'll also tighten up my editing in episode 2. I can see now that we left a lot of footage in the cooking that could have either been trimmed down or even sped up a little bit. So I want to work the dough out into a square shape. That's what I'm doing here, just kind of a rough square shape. Doesn't have to be perfect. But as I'm doing that, before I get it into the actual shape, I'm knocking the air out of it because we're going to do one more rise before we actually do the baking. So we're going to knock all the air out of it first. I don't know exactly the science behind it. All I know is that it is a necessity. With a lot of bread, you need to knock it back at least once and let it go through a second rise. So roughly quarter it as best you can. Get it as close as you can. But I don't go to the whole weigh it all out on the kitchen scale if I'm just baking at home. It's not that important. So set these quarters aside. I'm going to do one, and then it's going to cut very quickly to what you do with the little sausage. Well, essentially what you're going to do with this dough is you're going to make a sausage, or a sausage roll almost, in physical format. We're going to flatten out the dough if I will ever get back to the counter and get back to work. Why did I keep this footage? Right, collecting the bread flour for flouring the counter. It's really not that necessary. This bread is not very sticky at all. It comes up very nicely. I think I was just being paranoid. Quit fidgeting and flatten the fucking dough, Bard. Come on. All right. Sorry. I'm getting annoyed with myself. So you're going to flatten the dough out. You want it to be as rectangular as you can, a little bit longer than it is wide. And right across the top, after we roll it out, we're going to spread out our brie. Wow. I could have cut this down or at least trimmed it or sped it up, something. But yeah, right across the top, we're going to place our brie, and you'll see that in just a second. Way more circular than rectangular, but you get the idea. And wider than long, rather. All right. Collect the cheese and the honey. Now, you want to place your cheese along one side of your rectangle, one of the longer sides of your rectangle. You're just going to make a little neat row. It doesn't have to be perfect or pretty or anything like that, but stuff your cheese in, and then we're going to roll this up, which I start to do without putting the honey in it on accident, but you'll see me catch it and roll it back and make room for the honey. You don't need a lot of honey, in my opinion, and I say that, but I probably could have used more. So I'd say go for about a teaspoon of honey. I got it started and I almost forgot. I warn a little bit, because I think the reason I was hesitant to do too much more than just that little stripe was I didn't want it affecting the second rise. It didn't. It wasn't a problem. So if you're going for a sweeter loaf like this, it's fine. Crimp the ends, make it into a little sausage. Do that 4 more times. Now, before you worry about those swirls, I'm going to show you exactly how I did that. Watch. Feel free to run this back as many times as you need, but you literally just tuck it in itself and roll it up like it's a sock. Then you put the the loose end toward the outside, make sure the spirals are all going the same direction, pack them in a pan, let them sit and rise until they've doubled in size. Again, now let's get an egg, some fancy editing tricks, and do an egg wash right before we get this into the oven. That oven, by the way, you're going to want at about 400 degrees Fahrenheit. And you're going to want to watch this, because as you can tell, if you don't, it's easy for it to catch, especially with the egg wash. And if I had been paying a little bit more attention, I would have added some foil to protect the top, because it did need to finish baking on the inside, but it needed some protection from the heat at the end. The extra sugars from the fruit, I think, caramelized the crust a little bit extra. But look at this slice. Look at these pockets of cheese. That structure. Oh!
It's good. It's not too sweet. It has the richness of the Brie, the mildness of the pecans. I think it would be really good with butter on it. I think I like the oatmeal. I think it's a nice change. I also think I left it in there a little long and it caught. It needs to be a lower temperature if we're going to do that amount of time, because there's fruit in it and that fruit is going to caramelize. And unfortunately, if you get the outside crust, you do get a little bit of that burn. But the interior, it's fluffy, springy. It's still very warm, so it kind of returns to dough. I'm pretty pleased though.
You know, I started fishing because of YouTube. Now, I've done it a couple of times in my childhood, once or twice while out camping, but never with any encouragement, direction, or understanding of what I was doing or what I was after. So because of YouTube, if I trace it correctly, it started with, I was watching How Ridiculous. You know the Australian boys with the trick shots and the big tower that they drop stuff off of all the time? Well, they did one video where they went and caught fish on silverware. Fucking silverware. I was floored that they were catching fish on something so simple and cheap and not fish or bait shaped. I guess watching the whole video tripped that YouTube algorithm, and I was immediately suggested a fishing video from TA Fishing with Graham Pullen, also known as Totally Awesome Fishing. I was immediately hooked by how damn charming the man was, and I consumed hours of his content that night. And the next day I went out and I bought hooks and line, and I started learning how to tie knots. For the next several months, I'd both start fishing and consume a ton more fishing content here on YouTube. So real quick, I want to shout out to Graham of TA Fishing, John B of the Guggen Squad, and Tactical Bassin, as I learned more and more and I caught bigger and bigger fish. And yeah, links for them in the description as well. Check them out. They're all wonderful people. So what was so addicting about the sport itself? Well, I always liked nature. I camped a lot when I was a kid, albeit with family and not exactly roughing it, but being outdoors and exploring has been a favorite pastime of mine anyway. When I was a kid, one of my favorite books was My Side of the Mountain, and if you've ever read that, you know what I'm talking about. If you haven't, it's a children's book. It's a quick and easy read. Go check it out. My Side of the Mountain. Very good book. Anyway, fishing brought me back to that. Fishing became like a form of therapy for me after my mom's murder, though I want to stress that I still go to therapy on the regular, and I'm very thankful for it. It can be a solitary sport. It's a great way to go and get alone time, especially over the last year during the pandemic, and it was a good way to unplug and just be quiet and be part of nature for a while. Of course, if you're wearing a GoPro and struggling with a phone or more camera equipment for a show, it's not the usual relaxing experience of just going. But it's worth the changes and kind of the extra burden to bear during that comfortable time to share it with you. Finally, it turns a regular walk around a lake or a pond into a sort of game. It's a puzzle of the best kind, one that's different every day, can be affected by something as imperceptible to us as barometric pressure, to big events like storms or droughts. Anything can change how the fish behave. Baits and lures matter, but only as much as the techniques that you use to use them, if that makes sense. I don't consider myself a teacher in any of these subjects. Like I said before, I'm not an educator, especially not in fishing. So if you want to learn too, definitely check out those YouTube videos that I mentioned before. Like I said, they're down in the description, they're easy to reach, but they're the ones that taught me, and it's how I got to where I'm at. Anyway, here's some time actually spent doing the thing rather than just flapping my gums about it. Sorry about the wind noise, but it is Oklahoma, and the wind does indeed come sweeping down the plain. I'm telling you, I think Whopper Popper need to switch back to it. That's not. Stay down. Oh, I know. I heckin' got you, and it's all on film. Hey. Oh, bud. Ow. Okay, well, we found the other hook. I know. All right. I got you. Chunky monkey. Get that out. That probably didn't work. No, because I held the button again like a dummy. All right. Said there were fish over here. Hey. You need to chill. Sit down. I know. No. All right. Stop, please. I'm glad you got that other hook out, though. All right. You're a chunky monkey. Look at that belly. All right, let's get you back in. And there he goes. When they hit it that close, and they don't, I can't, with a lure like this, you can't take the time to play them. And playing a fish means letting them take out slack, fighting the fish in the water. You can't really take that extra time to do it. You need to get them in so they don't throw the lure like he did right after I got it out of the hook in his mouth. That fish was waiting for it, and that is what I love. Oh, stay down. That was that marinated. Let it wait, Oh, you monster! Look at you. Oh, and it came off. I don't care. I count it. Oh, nice. I can't really count that. I didn't touch him, but that's okay. I got to see him, and that's what matters. What a monster. That was a chonker. So strong. I thought he pulled up a bunch of weeds on the bottom, but he didn't. Phew!
Please tell me we're rolling. One of the biggest I've ever caught. We were rolling, and I'm glad. Got wrapped in a rather unorthodox way, so this is going to take me a second. Awesome. Holy crap. One of the biggest I've ever seen. Look at that. Don't you dare. Upside down, get some tonic and mobility. Look at that. Oh, God. That is a big fish. I know. Fuck. I want a picture of you. Look at this chunk. Get out of here, you beauty.
All right, before we get into the woodworking, I wanted to give a quick little backstory onto kind of how I ended up here. So very fast, just out of high school, crushing on this girl that works out at Renaissance Festival, and I want to make her something nice. So she dresses up as a fairy, and I was like, I will bring this fairy a magic wand. So I pick out a branch, and I do some carving by hand, and I use some sandpaper by hand, and I get a wood burner, and I wood burn their name into it, and I put a little acorn cap on the end of the handle, and then I bring it to them at fair. And that was actually the start of a beautiful friendship, is the very short version of that story. I promise you, it's a very short version. And if I get their permission, I will tell the full story someday, because I think it's actually very important to talk about. Sorry for the vague spoilers, but it involves another person, so I want to make sure they're okay with it before I go talking about it. So cut to several years down the line, I have a job as a jeweler, and they're training me. And I realize there's this little thing on the front of a jeweler's bench called a bench pin. And it's not long and thin and metal and pokes thing, not at all. It's actually a little block of wood. It's pointed, and every jeweler's bench pin looks very different. It's like a fingerprint, because what that bench pin is a little piece of wood to rest things like rings and earrings, tiny little pieces of metal that you need a stable surface to hold them against. Sometimes even there's a V cut in the front of it to wedge things in place, and then work on it with a big, fast rotary tool that could yank it out of your hand at any second. Well, on a slow day and off the end of my lunch break, I decided I would take my rotary tool to a bench pin, a fresh bench pin, and make my own to customize it to fit. And I very quickly found that I enjoyed shaping wood with a flick shaft versus shaping metal. Cut to several years later, I'm starting my business shortly after my mom was murdered, and one of the tools, the first tools that I bought myself, aside from the computer that I'm doing all the editing and everything on, was a flick shaft. And I love it. It's my baby. It's my favorite thing for all things crafting. I could not recommend one enough. Enough flapping my gums. Let's check out some woodworking. I hope you enjoy. Welcome adventurers, Rambling Bard here, and today we're going to be making a wand. So strap in. I'm going to mount the camera somehow above the sanding belt. You're going to watch how I do preliminary shaping on this, what I believe is white birch. And this is a wand from my dear friend Cass, one of the best dungeon masters and one of the best friends I've ever had. So here's to you, Cass.
I actually started doing woodwork as part of my brand as an attempt to have it be a source of income. The short version of that story is it's not really feasible for me, for one person, and for how I do creation and with limited shop and limited space. My physical and mental ailments make it really difficult to do any kind of consistent work. of any kind for anyone, including myself. And for what it's worth, I hate it. It slows me down constantly. Some days I can have incredibly powerful days where I'm full of nothing but energy and the ability to get things done, and I get it all done, and nothing stops me, and it's almost manic. Other days, I can have that energy and that desire, but my intestines will decide we're going to do other things, or my chronic headaches will come back. There's so many. It's a laundry list that I could go through, and I'll spare you those details for now because it's not really important. But crafting and having a consistent stock always built is not something I'm good at doing. So I figured out that this as a source of income was not really going to be feasible, and I needed to adjust, like so many other things that I've had to do as I've gone. Needed to adjust my expectations of myself and of my own business, what I was capable of doing and what I was capable of providing. So now, my woodworking is just that. It's just for passion. It's just for fun and creativity, for making things for people that matter to me, and for making pieces of art when I can. It doesn't pay the bills. It doesn't. And not all of them are something I'm as proud to show as I am of, say, this particular piece. I was very happy with how this turned out and who it belongs to and what it represents. It actually is made out of a very important piece of wood to me. That was the crossbar for my scarecrow costume that I wore when I busked for a living for a very short amount of time in Oklahoma City. More on that in just a second. Woodworking Me has something to say. All right, we are done with preliminary shaping, and now it is time to move on to the tool I was actually trained to use, the flex shaft. This is a Fordham SR series flex shaft, and this is actually what I was trained on to do jewelry work with. If I'm speaking a little loud, it's because I got the headphones on and music blaring still, so if it's copyrighted, I'll have to voice all this over and it won't matter anyway, will it? Anyway, so here's our preliminary shape. That didn't work. So there's a preliminary shape. And we'll see that come out more as I work with the flex shaft. Here's usually where I drop the gloves, but not the face protection or the glasses. Get it off my fucking hand. Right. So the last time I had a real job, quote unquote, not counting pizza delivery, was for an independent startup in Oklahoma City that shall remain nameless. The short version is I quit when I should have let myself get fired. I quit way too soon because I could see the direction the company was going, which was outsourcing all of their jobs to overseas to pad the bottom line so they could sell the company, which, spoiler alert, is exactly what they did a month after I left. Anyway, so I left, and some stuff happened at the time that I'm just going to skip over the nasty parts of it. But I ended up trying to make a living by busking on the streets of Oklahoma City. And if you do it in the right arts district, you can actually do it pretty successfully, and you have to get a license to do it. And at some point I'll sit down and tell that story, but that's for another day. But in essence, it marked the beginning of me doing this, my Rambling Bard stuff in earnest, in full, for the first time. I dressed up as that scarecrow and I gave it my all, and I fully depended upon the kindness of others to support me as a performer. And it worked for a very short time. again, that's a story for another day that I can go into details about. I don't think Oklahoma City is a good city to be busking in for what it's worth, at least not for the kind of performances that I want to do. And that's fine. That is absolutely fine. I'm sure there is a place for me and I will find it someday. But like I said, I'm pretty sure that crossbar is... Oh yeah, I wanted to talk about this. Fuck. Real quick. I'm upset because this type of sanding drum slips after a certain point. If it gets too warm, the rubber that holds it in place underneath will slip, and you'll get a nasty black rubber streak on the piece that you're working on. I used to work with a kind of sanding drum that didn't do that, which I'm trying to locate again. It's taking some work. Anyway, this wand is made from, like I said, the crossbar from that scarecrow costume. And I still have the rest of that I'm going to turn into one of my Van Richten canes. But that crossbar is very important to me because it held me up. And Cass got me through a lot with their Fate Finders game through Curse of Strahd. She held me up. They held me up. That whole group did. So I made them all wands. Please burn things responsibly, adventurers. Pay attention to what you're doing. If you get a hot flame, live flame, fucking turn it off when you're done with it. Now, I had fully intended on doing a slightly different design with the burning, but as I worked on it further, I decided that the fully burned half worked better, because it was supposed to be representative also of the one of the big bad evils in our campaign. And D&D campaign. That was kind of how I did all of the wands, as they were all incorporated into D&D. So here I am weighing it down in the solution of the finish, and we'll tell you more about that here. Alright, well that pretty much sums up making a wand for you. As you can tell, it took me a little over an hour from cutting the piece off to rough shaping and final shaping and final sanding. And then, because we did some pretty simple designs, we didn't go overboard with wood burning as far as like pyrography. Yeah, we used a torch, but we didn't use any fine lines or super details. The main thing that was the most time consuming after the pre-shape was pretty much smoothing everything down, getting it exactly to the shape that you want it to get to, and then getting everything very smooth in the same process. It requires using higher and higher grits of sandpaper and just time and effort. Luckily, this one was done in a little over an hour, and now the rest is just curing time. It's going to sit in our finish, which is a mix of citrus solvent and pure tongue oil by the Real Milk Paint Company. I like them a lot, but I'm not paid by them. But the reason I use this company's stuff and these particular products is because they are green and non-toxic. So in the event that you buy something that's made of wood from me and it ends up in your home, if you have pets or a kid or something along those lines, or maybe a zombie in the basement that you're worried about getting sick from chewing on wooden things, if they happen to do that, then you don't really have to worry about them eating dangerous chemicals like polyurethane or anything like that. It's just green, environmentally friendly, non-toxic stuff. It might upset their tummy a little bit, but it's not going to hurt them. And that's what's important to me, is keeping you, your family, and your loved ones, including your pets, safe. So I think that's going to wrap it up in the workshop for now. We will check back when that's done curing and I have completely polished it up, and I'll show you how I polish it, or I completely sand polish it up, because I'm going to go the rest of the way up the grit on this when the tongue oil is done curing, which takes about a week. And then we'll cover it in my secret beeswax formula. It's my beeswax polish that I have mixed with a little bit of citrus solvent.
and a little bit of my own favorite scented oils to give it just that Rambling Bard. So yeah, I'll show you how that all works when we're done with curing time. So for now, why don't we check out another segment? I lied. Why would we move on to the next segment before we're done with this one? Especially because I'm doing it chapter by chapter. I don't know what I was thinking. I don't know what I was thinking. Anyway, this next portion is going to be pretty short, and I apologize. I actually forgot to film while I was doing that particular wand. So instead, another one of the wands that I was making for one of my friends will be the stand-in to show you the technique for how this gets done. And hopefully I can get Cass to take some high-definition pictures of the one that I finished for her, so that way you can see the finished product of the one you've been watching me work on this whole time. So, yeah. All right, let me set up the camera, and I'll show you the very brief, very simple way that I do beeswax. Yes, my hair is longer and blonde. Don't worry about it.
All right, so buffing wheel. We've got a stiff one over here that has the layers stitched together, and a soft one where the layers are all floppy and free moving. It's much softer. The soft one will allow you to get a buff. Now I've got a a nipple of beeswax on this wooden boob here, and I use the beeswax, which is pretty much dried out, so it's just the wax. Is a wonderful polish for the wood, and this gives you an initial nice solid layer of the wax. You're going to do a couple of passes, and you want to support your wand, because if you don't, the wheel will grab it and fling it across the workshop and probably break it. Or if you don't have your buffing wheel mounted, your buffing wheel will scoot toward you. Yes, I know, I've got to get some more tables and stuff to actually mount my power tools. And then the soft wheel, you go over it with a light touch to get a mirror finish. And the last step, t-shirt. It's the best thing.
And there you have it. That's how you buff a wand. Yeah, so hopefully, here's some cool pictures of Cass's wand. Enjoy. So I'm really happy with how Cass's wand turned out, and I hope that you enjoyed watching me make it. Next, I wanted to talk to you about video games, and to spare you the overly long resume of what all systems I've had, and what all I've played, and what all my favorites are, I'll just sum it up to say I was pretty much raised on a Super Nintendo, and I've grown into a PC gamer now. I enjoy games that can be as simple, but also as refined and polished as Mega Man X, Super Metroid, Final Fantasy IV, and VI. Fast forward to now, and I'm primarily a PC gamer, although I do enjoy my Switch games as well. That plays things like Baldur's Gate and Dark Souls 3. And on occasions, the things that move a little bit faster. I used to play Overwatch, but yet again, I'm boycotting Blizzard because they hired somebody from the Trump administration. Anyway, so without rambling on more about the games that I like and games that I don't like, what I intend to do with my gaming chapters like this is just kind of show you what I've been doing, show you what I think of a game. Sometimes it'll be something really new, sometimes it'll be an old game that nobody's heard of or that few people have heard of, and there's only a couple of entries on speedruns.com for it. But it's going to be a game that I'm passionate about, and just like everything else, I just want to share with you my passion. So I hope that you will enjoy while I talk to you about some of my deepest passions in gaming, Dark Souls 3, and the mixed bag that is World of Warcraft.
Dark Souls 3. Ugh. Aside from Dungeons & Dragons, this is easily the game that I have spent the most time during 2020 playing. And while there are so many lore videos out there, like Vadavidia, thank you, praise you, you're amazing, and of course useless data from Grandpa, I wanted to talk a little bit about something that I haven't heard anybody really show their appreciation for, and that to me is the cooperation and PvP aspects specifically of Dark Souls. Now, Dark Souls is a game and series about exploration, customization, and cooperation in a very large way. The biggest meme around Dark Souls is Praise the Sun, and that's all about jolly cooperation. Am I right, adventurers? Now, I wanted to show you some of the unwritten rules of meeting people, and this is the first one. I wasn't ready. He wasn't ready. He wants to do the emotes first, so let's bow to each other, and now the fight itself can begin. What I love about PvP in this game is there are unspoken rules that when you're brand new, you may not know them, but if you slow down and pay attention, you'll learn them really quickly. Here, this is just a fight, so I'm going to talk over it, but I will point out moments as we come across them where there are these little unspoken rules, and I think this fight is a really good example of it. We played around together. This is a situation where people can't talk to each other. There is no voice communication that I have enabled here. There's no easy writing out chat back and forth. All you've really got is a handful of emotes, a couple of stones that say simple phrases like hello, thank you, I'm sorry. And otherwise, all you can really do is it's almost like signing in its own right in a very simple way. Because right here, I'm emoting, I'm clapping, he bows, he's down to 1 hit point, and he stops fighting. There's this unspoken language of, this is how we play Dark Souls together. And I'm here farming vertebra shackles, so my end goal is indeed to kill my opponents and get my vertebra shackle. So I like to do it in this particular area, which again was not designed this way necessarily, but very quickly became a hub in Dark Souls 3 for PvP fights. And this is where people will go to duel, to farm vertebra shackles. It just makes me really happy to see all of the different ways that this game has evolved these communications over the years. And one of my favorites that I'm going to show you coming up, I don't think it's this one, but one of my favorites coming up that I'm going to show you is the Battle Royales that set up here in a normal online play summonable mode without using the special item that you get that I've actually never used that's specifically for PvP. But I spent most of 2020 maxing out this game. I got every trophy, every achievement, I should say, through Steam. I'm very proud to have done that. I had a lot of fun doing that, and I look forward to continuing having fun. I don't know what I'm getting at there. Ow, spaced out. I had a lot of fun doing it. It was frustrating, but I can't get out of my closet to go stop the recording and start it back over. So I apologize for stumbles in audio. We're working on that. Anyway, I had a lot of fun getting the achievements. It took me a long time. I'll have to look at the amount of hours I actually spent, and I'll put it here in text in the screen. I spent maxing out this particular character, and this was part of it. This was actually farming the vertebra shackles that you needed to get a 100%, get all of the things, all of the achievements run. So I like that there is honorable combat, even amongst duelists. Is everybody wants to bow first, everybody wants to make sure everyone's ready, and you don't use your Estus flasks. That's another unspoken rule that I found really interesting. And in that first fight, you'll notice that I drained all of mine, and that's something that I saw once, that it's something players do to signify, like, we're not using Estus, this is a 1 health bar and we're done kind of fight. And that's pretty cool. Now, of course, I want to just go ahead and admit that I picked and chose. It's weird to say that in past tense because I normally say in present tense, picked and choose. Anyway, I picked and chose my clips here, and quite obviously picked a bunch of the ones where I came out victorious, but I'm not that great. So here's one of those battle royales I was talking about. You get summoned in, and there's all of these people fighting, and it's hard to tell who the main phantom is that summoned everyone, but there's usually an audience up here on this top ridge, and they watch as the fights go down, and you wait your turn, and if you keep watching here in a little bit, you'll actually see a perfect example of what happens to you if you don't adhere to these rules, and if you break the conventions, and if you're rude, so to speak, everything stops. And the sinner gets punished. We'll put it that way. So yeah, I really appreciate that this game has the ability to make up your own little games like this with PvP. And I appreciate how quickly the majority of the community that still participates in this game adheres to these rules. Most people want everybody else to have fun, even if they want to fight other people. You don't find a whole lot of people that invade anymore. And if they do invade in this area, it's usually to do this. It's usually to do an agreeable PvP thing. I don't know. This was the game that made me fall in love with the Dark Souls franchise and series. And I think a lot of it was because of this. It was because of these portions of the game. Obviously, we don't have to keep all of this footage. I'm just sitting there watching this. We might clip through and see, but I really like to show, and I might just leave it in here. It's not a particularly long section. I just find it incredibly fascinating. How many times have I said that? It's neat to watch. It's neat to see people participating in such a thing. I'm just waiting for the point where somebody acts the fool. I'm pretty sure I lose this fight. Not everything I do is great. All that waiting just to die? Yeah. It's fun, you know. To me, it's part of the experience, and it's important that we honor that, you know. So here's a perfect example here. Fighting a guy named Baba Yaga, by the way, or gal named Baba Yaga, or non-binary pal, of course. And somebody interrupts and starts attacking one of the other, attacks the host. Everything stops. We all stop fighting each other. I accidentally bumped the host there. But we all stop fighting each other and chase this guy down. Those fucking walls, man. Get him! Yeah! I know how this ends. What am I doing? And then we all run back. Get out of the way of the archers and hope the archers don't kill. And we all run back. And Baba Yaga and I will get back in the ring and resume our fight. Cut out the run. I don't know. I was gonna say maybe cut out the run, but it's kind of funny to watch the Drang guys try and hunt us down. I've never played another game like this where people can so easily just ruin each other's day and ruin the fun, and you could just run in and start smashing everybody, kind of like that guy did. And you could have good equipment and be a very skilled player, and you could just spend your time ruining people's day. And there are players out there like that, especially the players that decide to name their characters something anti-Semitic or racist or homophobic or transphobic or any number of the fucking phobics that we don't fucking need anymore. But, you know, fun ruiners out there exist, but by and large, I find that the Dark Souls 3 community is comprised of a lot of people who just want to have some jolly cooperation. And I proceed to get my ass kicked by Baba Yaga. So, that's my fun with Dark Souls 3, and I hope that you enjoyed seeing why I have so much fun with it. But let's check out World of Warcraft. It's been a while since I've played World of Warcraft.
So why don't we like our odds? It's just Nathanos? Does he have a dragon? What's going on?
And I'll let present me run commentary, so I'll just be quiet. And if you're not sure what's going on because you're not familiar with WoW, don't worry about it. It's too boring to care. As you will find out, we got bored real fast.
Whew, boy, it's been a while since we've been here. Should have been flying a little bit lower so I could at least discover these places as I'm coming. Hey, yo, butt face!
This is neat. Check it out. I'm gonna die. Like, I know I'm gonna die. Yeah, what? What happened? Did it just not load? That was weird as fuck. Let's eat first. Huh, I'm glad I was recording for that. That's a big old bear. Hi. Hi. There's some other players. Yeah, Flight Master. Yeah, better
What's up?
Oh, I have all this. Ooh, a human Death Knight. He's probably better than me. I don't need to start a fight. Fun though that might be. Whoa, holy shit. Okay.
Back into the fray with you!
Oh, fuck yeah, new sword. Hi. I wonder how many other. Yep, so many. I'm just sit here and wave at everybody. I can't wave when I'm dead? Come on. BS.
The ogres are using necromancy to raise a dragon from the dead. They need sacrifices like us to fuel their magic. They're about to start a ritual that will...
What's this animation they did?
already begun. They're going to use the
I was gonna ask about that.
reanimate the dragon.
It's
And
rough,
we
buddy.
must take action. Remember that when we band together, the Horde can conquer any challenge. We will bring an end to these rituals before the ogres can complete them. Loktar Ogar!
it's just a cycle of them making a stupid face over and over. Like,
And their jaw unhinging.
So yeah, I got bored with WoW really, really quick. And then I got Final Fantasy 14. I know, one MMO to another, out of the frying pan into the fire. But Final Fantasy is so much prettier, and I don't know, there's just something about the pacing that feels better. I can play it as a solo game and enjoy myself and feel like it matters. And so future gaming stuff, I guess that's something that I should mention. And while we're on the subject of gaming, D&D. You may have noticed, if you're a follower of mine, that I don't really have D&D shows up on my channel anymore. I might do an individual video where I talk about this more at length, but the short version is D&D as a show for me is not an enjoyable experience to DM for. I could play in a recorded game. I don't know how I feel about playing in a live streamed game. There's just, my anxiety ramps up too much. I have a lot more to say about D&D. I have a lot of complicated thoughts about D&D, a lot of love for D&D, and a lot of hate for some of the culture that's sprung up around D&D. How many times can I say D&D? Anyway, I'll talk more about it later, but suffice to say, no more actual recorded games for a while, simply because they weren't making me happy, and I wasn't able to feel like I was making my players happy or doing the game justice. So with gaming out of the way, I think now it's time to move into the heavy part of the show. So this next section of the show is the last one. And it's the heaviest for this episode. So I want to give you a verbal warning. Written across the screen there, you should see what we're going to be talking about a little bit. On April 4th this year, 2021, it marked the 4-year anniversary of my mother's murder. If you've been following me for that time, you know about that. As a matter of fact, after she passed, the money that she left my family was enough for us to get out of debt that we had been drowning under for a long time, and also allowed me to get a lot of tools to chase my dream, which is this. You're watching it right now. This next section is about sewing and cosplay. But it's also about reclaiming something that should have been mine. Part of a childhood that I missed out on. Part of an experience that I missed out on. And now will never, ever get. Growing up, after my mom remarried, I was not allowed to learn how to sew. I'd grown up watching my mom make quilts and clothes and sewing me Halloween costumes. I think I was 3 years old and she made me Winnie the Pooh, a full bodysuit. I was fucking adorable. My mother was a talented woman. She was a creator. She was a maker. She was a cook. She was a seamstress. She was a gardener. And I'm not a mama's kid, you know. I'm praising a woman that very much deserved praise for who she was, but I was not a mama's boy. In fact, I was, if I'm being perfectly honest, I was constantly vying for my father's attention. But there was one thing with my mom that I desperately wanted my entire childhood, and I was vehemently barred from it, not by my mother, but by my stepdad. I think if my mom had had any say, she would have eventually caved to my requests to learn to sew. Stepdad would not allow it. It's not for boys. Men don't sew. It's women's work. My stepdad was the kind of monster who would say things to a 10-year-old putting on gloves to pull weeds from the rose bed. How are you ever going to be a man if you wear gloves while you're gardening? That motherfucker's dead now, and I ain't afraid of his ghost. Unfortunately, my mother is dead too. I'm not going to tell this whole story right now, here. I'm not here to monetize my mother's death, but I'm going to be open about it when I can. Her name was Catherine Bryant of Edmond, Oklahoma, and she was murdered April 4th, 2017. After my stepdad committed suicide, my mom eventually remarried, and that man's son killed my mother. If you want the full news details, that sort of thing, I will tell you that the articles are accurate and that there are recordings of my mom's late husband's 911 call. It's not easy to listen to. It's a lot harder to live with this hole in my life. About a year after her death, after I'd done my best to recover from it, after we bought a new car and I'd seeded my business with what she left us, I got her old sewing machine. And this sewing machine was her pride and joy, let me tell you. It's an embroidery machine. It was a big deal when she got it, brand new. It took me almost 3 years to touch it, to bring myself to try a single stitch. So I was afraid I'd break it. Or worse. I don't know what's worse, or worse. I was afraid I'd get yelled at. Stupid as that sounds. Afraid I'd have to hide it. That I was doing something shameful. Sewing is me reclaiming my femininity. I didn't get to transition before puberty, so now I have a lot of work to do to undo it. And I'm not here to perpetuate a gender binary that sewing is women's work, because goddammit, anybody can sew, and I'm a woman, but I'm not a woman. I'm non-binary, so it isn't about gender, but it is. It's complicated. Life is complicated. So before we get into talking about cosplay and talking about gender and sewing and all of that, I just want to toss out a quote that I've heard 1,000 times. But in case you haven't, it might change how you interact with an individual. Everyone that you meet is fighting invisible battles that would be impossible for you to know the depth of. Everyone. Be kind. Always. Choose love. Always. It's hard to say that I hope you'll enjoy this next section. But I do. I hope you'll hear it.
This was my mom's embroidery machine. A Husqvarna Viking Rose. I remember the day that she got it vividly. She's never been so excited about something shiny and new and technologically impressive before. And it was fun to watch her geek out about this. I was never allowed to do sewing with my mom. Whether it was entirely the men in charge in my life's decision or hers, I don't fully know. But I do know that it was women-coded work, and that as a boy, or what they thought, and I thought I was a boy at the time, I was barred from doing it. I found out later that my older sibling, who was feminine presenting at the time, was barred from doing masculine things in much the same way, to the point of they took her Legos away from her when I was born and gave them to me. Don't force your kids into gender roles, folks. Let them express themselves. You're just doing damage when you stop them. Florida legislature recently passed a law that bans trans kids from receiving care and participating in sports. It makes me sick. And this is not how we should treat people. It makes me want to flee the country. I don't know if I'm going to be able to, and I doubt that I will. I wasn't able to get away from the rules that my parents set down either. Rules that were abusive and harmful. But I did eventually reach this point, where I am with you today, reclaiming it. As Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. once said, the moral arc of the universe is long, but it bends towards justice. I might be paraphrasing or have that slightly wrong, but I believe I have the spirit of the quote, and I believe he was right. So keep fighting. Keep protecting trans kids. And keep reclaiming what was supposed to be yours. And I hope that you'll enjoy watching me do so. As you could probably tell here, I'm working on a Legend of Zelda cosplay. Specifically from Ocarina of Time, actually. Link is a long way off. I've made a lot of progress on his wig, and I could show some pictures of that here shortly too. But as far as the tunic, I'll probably have to start over, and that's okay. This is cheap practice fabric. As a matter of fact, I want to show you just exactly how I messed up the skirt. So, the idea is right, but the pleats need to be 2 inches deeper at the bottom, you know? I'm worried that's going to pull the skirt in too much. 2 inches deeper at the top, even. Or an inch deep. And we'd have a pleat work. I also have made this tunic far too long, and I didn't make these pleats deep enough, and there's all sorts of things that I messed up along the way that I feel like I'm going to end up following a tutorial or a couple other patterns instead. I'm literally just guessing at this and drafting a pattern myself. Not something a beginner seamster or seamstress should do, I don't think. But it has been a learning experience, and that's really been the important part, is I've been learning the stitches and learning to work fabric, and how something as simple as ironing your fabric before stitching it can make a huge difference. Experienced seamsters will probably be giggling at a lot of the mistakes they'll see me make in any recordings like this. But I wanted to show the beginning. In the words of Jake from Adventure Time, sucking at something is the first step at being kind of good at something. You gotta suck first. Babies fall down when they try to walk, and you gotta remember, when you try a new thing, you're a baby at it. Even if you've done something tangentially related that you're really good at, the second that you change a medium that you're working in, or the second that you specialize the area that you're working in, it ramps the difficulty up exponentially. So you have to be patient with yourself. If you're deciding to be stubborn like I am and wanting to be self-taught, not wanting to go and buy patterns or print patterns, you're gonna run into problems, and you're gonna run into more problems than you would if you were following a tutorial. Now this piece is the only fully handmade piece of Rudolph van Richten's outfit so far. There will be other pieces that are handmade, but they'll be smaller and props. But the pants were store-bought, the shirt was store-bought, I might have dyed it myself. But I made this vest from scratch, from my materials, from a pattern I drafted myself. And maybe you can hear it in my voice, but I'm pretty fucking proud of it. And there's some more professional photos coming up here. But I just wanted to say I have become addicted to sewing. I like it. And despite how frustrating it is, I love it a lot. And I know that I'm going to be doing more of it. My challenge, I think, is going to be teaching myself to do the highly detailed, very small, fidgety things. It's easier for me to get frustrated, and I know that it will absolutely frustrate me in a not good way when it comes to sewing. But the more intricate and detailed and skilled I can be in creating a cosplay, the more thrilled with it I am. Making that vest and then finding a solution for the buttons not quite meeting when I was done felt really good. Even if it's not perfect, it felt really good. And I can't wait to make more and to keep reclaiming my destiny. And hey, maybe Destiny's a little cheesy sounding. Fuck you, I don't care.
I haven't had any vocal training yet, so I'm sorry, I'm still gonna sound pretty masculine, but I'll do my best. I know that was kind of heavy, so I want to end happy, if we can. Everything I'm wearing was donated to me, or was a gift, and I'm very thankful. But you should know that transitioning is expensive, and I'm gonna need some help with those costs and the costs of continuing to do this. So if you can, support me through Patreon. Go to patreon.com/theRamblingBard. There's other ways to donate too. Please feel free to visit my website, theramblingBard.net, and the Linktree has lots of different ways you can support me. Like I said, I want to end happy, so I want to tell you I've got a lot of good news and exciting content coming in the next episode. Both continuing talking about my transition, but more in a positive sense. Let's tell good stories and happy stories about how good it's felt and the changes that I've felt and what I'm going through. Again, not an educator or a medical professional, I just want to share my experiences with you. Though transitioning will be a big part of the next episode, a really big part of the next episode is going to be a cosplay deep dive on Van Richten. I'm going to tell you everything from the very beginning of that old man and how I was introduced to him, right on down to the very last detail in the costumes. And I'm really excited to go into each and every little bit for you. And the other thing I want to tell you about is another dream of mine that is being realized. The short version? I'm training to be a jouster. Yeah, like full plate mail, knock somebody else off their horse with a big stick. It's called a lance, hello, I know. I'm going to tell you all about it next episode. If I keep talking about it, I'm just going to spill it all now. But I'm going to tell you all about it next episode and tell you how my journey is beginning. I'm very excited. And I think that's all I have for you. Other than a very, very grateful heart that you have made it this far. I know it was asking a lot to have you sit down for an hour and a half to watch this. Anytime I do an episode, it's going to be long form like this. But I promise short form performance pieces will still happen in between. Music covers, acting, that sort of thing. So you can look forward to some content that's a little bit easier to digest. Of course, you can always find me on TikTok. And I guess that's where I should stop. I'm the Rambling Bard, and adventurers, this has been episode 1 of the Rambling Bard Show. Life is a series of choices between fear and love. Choose love, adventurers. Always. See you next time.